So welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor. It's your host, Patrick Hogg, and we're going to go over to London today to speak to another chiropractor. He's running an associate-based practice. He's actually originally from Sweden. I didn't even know that there was a college in Sweden until about 15 minutes ago. So he studied at the Sweden Scandinavian School of Chiropractic. He studied... it was 24 years ago you graduated, wasn't it? 24 years ago. He's been working in London pretty much ever since. It was 6 months after you graduated that you moved over to the UK. So he's actually originally from Sweden, came over, met some of his friends, fell in love with London and just decided that he never wanted to go back. So this next guest I actually met through my inner circle and my mastermind group. In fact, actually a lot of the time that we go to the seminars, for some reason, we end up gravitating to the same table and we've ended up sitting and having some really deep conversations. So I know that this guy has got some really, really good gems. He's got, how many associates have you got working for you?
One at the moment, but I've got another 2 coming on. So we're going to be 4 in total.
So he's running a really, really busy practice. And I know that he's going to tell us a lot more. But like I say, he's one of these guys, he's super, super humble. He's super humble, but you can clearly see that he's progressing really, really fast because if you're going to take 2 new members of staff on at the same time, his clinic is exploding. His clinic is exploding. And it is Kris Harm. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick.
So Kris, just tell us a little bit more about yourself. Maybe tell us how you found chiropractic and why you find chiropractic so important to yourself.
Well, from a very early age, when I was probably 4 or 5, I started doing gymnastics because I was climbing the walls growing up, a little monkey that my mum and dad called me. And from that, grew an interest about the body and how it functions and what you could do with it. And of course, in those days, no one knew about chiropractic in Sweden. So any injuries that I sustained over the time I did gymnastics, I most of the time went to physios, and they were all fine and sort of helped heal, but it took a long time. And then at the age of 16, I had a pretty severe accident and had a sort of a small swelling on my cervical spine and couldn't move my arms after a fall. I mean, I could move them, I couldn't lift them up to my face. And then went to a chiropractor who was a teacher to one of my other friends who was a bit older, who did gymnastics. And he literally adjusted me and I could touch my nose. And that twist and turn just went from I want to be a physio to literally that second, this is what I'm going to do, right? There's a no-brainer totally. So over a period of 3-4 months, I was going to him and got better and better and better and went back to gymnastics much faster than what I've ever had done before and with a much more severe injury. And that was the whole turning point. And then the goal was just to, when can I afford to go into the private school that was when I was 23, right? Eventually got in there and just powered on, really. And chiropractic has become, or is a way of life, right? You know, if your nervous system is working perfect, then your body will function perfect, you know? There's an inside out theory in chiropractic, which I live by totally. Not saying that I wouldn't take painkillers if I really needed them, but you know, I don't have one. I don't have any in my house. So
that's great. That's great. So essentially what you're saying is that obviously you had a big event in your life where essentially chiropractic really kind of changed something where other areas or other therapists maybe couldn't give you that relief quite so fast.
Yeah, it was an instant change, whereas physical therapy is great for rehabbing injuries and stuff, but that changed from not being able to touch my nose to with one adjustment, and he said to me, now lift your arm up, and I just went like that, right? And
it's interesting
because my face must have said everything.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have this conversation with a lot of my patients that you know, you can do all the physical therapy and rehabilitate all the muscles, but you've just got to imagine that if the nerve line to that muscle is blocked, that you can exercise that muscle as much as you want, it's going to remain weak. And it's the same with all these people that have got really severe forward head carriages. They are starting to create tension on the nerve roots sitting to the side of the neck, and they are starting to create tension on the muscles sitting to the side of the neck, and they are starting to create tension and wear on the discs. And as time goes on, that's going to start to have a deteriorative effect on the nerve system, and as a result create symptoms. And you can't necessarily exercise a nerve root problem away. It actually needs that release of pressure and allowing that body to do what it's supposed to do inside, which is heal itself.
Yes. Then you can add the exercise to it, right? But
and by the way, if you release the nerve pressure and then start exercising, and that nerve's got the right impulse, guess what? That muscle is going to accelerate. So,
yes.
You know, as me and Kris, neither of us are going to say that one profession is better than the other, but there might be a better order to do things in.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a physical therapist working with me in London as well, an injury rehabilitation specialist, and he sees most of our clients after we have seen them, or, you know, interlinked. So it's no better than the other. It's just a cooperation that needs to be there.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree. And we do exactly the same thing in our practice. We've got MTs, so we've got massage therapists, and we've got PTs, so we've got physical therapists as well. And again, cross referral is something that we do quite a lot. Especially me, I refer a lot of my patients out. I don't necessarily, my PTs and my MTs maybe don't refer so many to me, but I definitely refer them out. Because I know, you know, for me, it's about what the patient needs, not necessarily what I need. And that's a less egotistic way of actually approaching, you know, a client.
It's a better space to be in, right?
A space of abundance. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
You don't necessarily need to hold on to your clients in case they prefer the other therapy. If they prefer the other therapy, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, that happens in an associate clinic like ours as well. We tend to focus on the similar techniques, but we all have different techniques to use. So often when somebody goes away on holiday and comes back, and, you know, for example, my clients have been seeing my associates, and then there's going to be one or two that sort of prefer that, and that's okay. And that's what we say to them all the time. If you prefer somebody else, then go there. My motto is you need to get adjusted. I don't care who adjusts you, right? You need to get adjusted.
Agreed. So, and I've had it with so many patients that basically relocate, and, you know, at the end of the day, the obviously what we want is the best outcome for them. So finding a chiropractor for them when they relocate is also very, very important. So Kris, obviously being chiropractors, one of the biggest priorities for us is actually taking care of our own health. And so what I wanted to know about you is maybe some of the techniques, some of the rituals or routines that you go through to maybe keep yourself a little bit healthy that you think might share some value with the listeners today.
Well, the given ones, obviously, eat well and sleep well, right? Cook your own food. Don't buy ready-made, you know, processed food is not energy. Make sure you sleep properly, you know, and if you don't sleep properly, do something about it. And I think planning is big for me, always has been, goal setting and planning. But I exercise, I do meditation every day. So, you know, my usual morning routine is wake up, I do half an hour meditation, I do half an hour to 40 minutes exercise. I don't watch the news in the morning. I don't want to know what's happening. I do some affirmations for myself on my way into clinic, if I'm going straight into clinic. I also, like I said, I plan things. I like doing the things I love. So, but that takes planning, right? So goal setting is big, and it's a big word. People are a bit scared of that, but write things down. What do you want to do this year? Plan your holidays and not just go on a whim, because it never becomes a good one. And yeah, that's kind of how I live my life, right?
It's interesting. It's interesting because I'm the opposite end of the spectrum. See, I have I have to have someone else in my life. So I've said this before on some of the previous podcasts. I actually have to have my girlfriend to rein me in a little bit, because if I didn't have her, she's kind of the yin to go with my yang. Is I'm very sporadic, I'm very visionary, I'm very in the moment, but sometimes it does make me realize that actually maybe a little bit more planning could have made a lot of our procedures in the clinic, our training for our staff, or even just my general life would have made things significantly easier. And so it's always really nice. I think this is potentially some of the reasons why obviously we gravitate to each other during the seminars, is that, you know, we know what we need to learn of each other.
Yeah, totally.
And, you know, for me, putting myself out there is absolutely fine, whereas other people will need that level of preparation. But also, if there is something that seriously needs some preparation, like looking after your health, and this is the great thing about having a chiropractor, because by the way, I'm like that at home, but when it comes to my patients' care, we're super prepared. We have a plan, we have a routine, we set the dates, we get it pre-booked, we get it pre-recorded, we get their exercise sorted at the right times. It's properly planned out. So there are areas of my life, but like I say, my personal life is really interesting.
Yes, but I agree with you, because I haven't always been like that. When I was younger, I was a bit more sort of, let's go with the flow and see what happens, right? But it's something that I have learned to do and prepare for, and I love being spontaneous as well, right? It has its place, but for bigger things and for your health, which is an ongoing thing, right? It's not, you know, like I'm sure you see a lot of people who sort of, I do gym for 2 months and then I don't do it for 10 and then do another 2 months, and, you know, and it's not really healthy, you know. That's not a good thing to do and to live. But
and it's an interesting point that you bring in, because if you it's like anything. Like if you go to the gym 5 times a week for 2 months, that's great, but it's much better to go 2 or 3 times a week for the rest of your life. And ironically, this is exactly the same thing with chiropractic care. Okay, it's great having that 2 times a week or 3 times a week at the beginning, resolving the issue, but then it's so much easier to just do a low level of maintenance or keep checking in with your body to make sure that you don't have to keep doing that up and down. Because what we see over time is if we do that up and down, we do generally start to see a deterioration in people's health. Just like anything, it's like crash diets and all of these other things. They do the same thing as potentially chiropractic and physical therapy care and massage care. It's great to just treat the symptoms, but if you keep going in and out of that symptomatic state, those tissues are generally degenerating.
Yeah, I mean, it's nowadays most people I should say now go to the dentist on a regular basis, right? They don't wait until they have cavities and toothache, and I mean, some people do, but most people don't. And it's the same thing. And, you know, the teeth are still a peripheral thing, although it sits in their head, but it's controlled by the nervous system. So if you want your teeth to function properly and your gums to support that, then your nervous system is where you should start, really.
Amazing.
Where it is.
I always love having conversations with chiropractors, because you get some absolutely massive gems. Right. So what we're going to do, I would love to ask you if you could give maybe some of our patients and listeners some tips on how they could potentially improve on their health.
I would say to write down what you want to do, because it's no point forcing somebody to do an exercise or something that they don't like. It's not going to be lasting. It's just the way it is. I mean, yes, there's going to be a little resistance to start with to set up any good habits, but good habits are there for a reason. They should be there for a reason, right? I read an amazing book recently called Atomic Habits, which I think could be a help to a lot of people. It's on Audible as well as an easy read book, but it's how we set up good habits and the reasons behind why they don't last and some reasons behind why they do last. So that was a good one. But again, start small, you know, give yourself, do like a 5-minute stretch every day, or just do 1 stretch a day and start small changes, you know. Make sure that you plan your meals. Much easier to eat healthily when you plan your meals. You know, instead of going spontaneously when you're hungry in the shop, you never buy good food. Never ever, right? And even though sometimes it happens, because it does, we're only humans, right? You always end up and looking at it going like, why did I buy this? And then eat it.
Yeah, and obviously you end up buying the things that are easy to consume when you're in the supermarkets, which is always going to be chocolate bars and packets of crisps and stuff like that. And ironically, when you do something like that, it will spike your blood glucose level. And as a result, what you'll find is you'll naturally be really hungry again in an hour. So you've just eaten a load of calories that are essentially gonna be pretty much useless, because one, there's no nutritional value in them. And then two, it spikes up your blood glucose. It drops all the way back down again. So then you're going to end up eating the more calories that you should have eaten in the first place. So if you obviously replace it with something healthy, like a fresh salad with maybe some decent proteins in there as well, or even some fruit or vegetables, you're going to have that steadier rise in your blood sugar levels, which means you don't crash again and then want to eat even more. And then you just keep reaching back to snack. You'll notice it. There's a lot of people that obviously have that cup. They have that sugary breakfast in the morning, and then in the middle of the morning they have a coffee with the sugar in it, and then like a sugary snack like a biscuit, and then they do lunch, and then they'll finish that with a bag of crisps and a chocolate. And you just kind of see that and that's why people crash in the middle of the afternoon, that peak and trough of their blood glucose.
Yeah, it's not a good. That's not a good plan. That's not a good plan. But that's kind of the thing I say to most of my clients is start small and think about what you want to do and how you want to do it, and then I work out a plan together with them, and I sort of guide them into a good path for them, and that's kind of for everyone, really.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, like you say, is most of the time I recommend with patients as well is adding something in first before you take something away. So say, for example, like if someone knows that they're not eating enough fruits and vegetables and they're also eating too much sugar, I'll generally advise them to eat more of the fresh fruits and vegetables before we take something away. Because at the end of the day, this is their reward, whereas this is almost going to feel like a little bit of work. But if they get the reward for doing the work, it makes it a little bit more sustainable. And at the end of the day, yes, I know that obviously eating the sugar isn't a good thing, but it's better to get them to actually start getting those antioxidants in again, because it's going to encourage what we're doing.
We know naturally that when we do healthy things, we tend to eat or gravitate more to healthier food, because naturally that's what the body is telling you. Whereas if we don't exercise and don't do healthy things, we tend to gravitate more to the high energy, high sugar, bad foods, if you like, if you can call them bad foods.
You almost don't want to sabotage yourself.
No.
You know what I mean? Like you're doing all this work in the gym. It's like it makes absolutely no sense to then go and sabotage all of that hard work that you've just created. So it's just it doesn't make any sense.
No, not at all.
Amazing. Look, there's been some absolutely great tips in there. So look, obviously write down exactly what it is you want to achieve.
Yeah.
Having a goal written down, it makes it so much easier. And also it almost gives you that guideline, that tunnel to run towards. You've got that light. And interesting that you were saying about that book. What was the name of the book one more time?
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. This isn't the only book for building habits, by the way. There's another book that's like Build a Habit in 21 Days. Because essentially what they found is that the average person, and I think it extended anywhere from about a week or a few days, because some people can just build a habit like that. It's just done. And some people took 6 weeks, but what they basically found is the average was 21 days. So for most people, if they can keep a habit up for 21 days, they'll actually sustain it. So like getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning or eating fresh fruits and vegetables, if you can sustain that, then that after 21 days, that should become a new habit. And the other thing that you obviously said is make sure you plan it. Plan your meals, plan your exercise routines, plan your social time, all right? Plan your holidays, because if you can plan everything, then it becomes a little bit more structured. You know exactly where you're going to be, and it makes it much easier, again, to sustain those things. If you said that every single day, I'm going to do exercise between 6 and 7, and you make that a habit, it will become much more consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you generally feel a lot better about everything, really, starting your day like that. So
it also creates some routine and structure as well, which You know, as chiropractors, we quite like structure and routine because, again, like I say, if we go back to our care planning and our models, and also we even just look at the body and reorganizing, a lot of the time we're looking at structure and reorganization of the body as well. So, and that requires proper planning, like anything.
And I still think it's way room for being spontaneous as well in between that, right? Totally. So a lot of people say, oh, I'm not a planner. I was never a planner myself, but I am now. It's just a creation. So
amazing. So look, I wanted to ask this question's maybe a little bit deeper into understanding past Kris, which I call it the Terminator question. And the reason why I call it the Terminator question is obviously in the Terminator got the chance to go back and report to himself what was happening in the future. So, and we all know that there was something that we were doing in our earlier career, and it might not be something that you regret, but maybe you wish you knew this earlier in your career so that you could have made a change earlier on. And if you could go back and tell yourself that one thing, what might it be?
Maybe to work a bit harder at university. Maybe just a little bit. But actually the biggest thing I think was that in my school in those days, sort of early 90s, we didn't really have any philosophy. We didn't really have any chiropractic philosophy. We had a little bit of the history behind it, but that was it. And that's something that I really, really missed. There was that little component that I couldn't put my finger on while I was working. And it wasn't until a few years into my career that I literally was slammed into the philosophy of chiropractic. But I don't really have any regrets because that's something that I always try not to have. I don't want to have any regrets. So that's one of my little things. But you always learn from making mistakes, right? So that's not a regret. It's just a learning curve, a lesson, a life lesson. So
I was just about to say the same thing. It's not a regret. It's just a lesson. And it's our coach said it the other week. Chaos is change's way of saying that something needed to happen.
Yeah.
And so we almost, when something goes really, really wrong, we almost feel like the world is against us. But normally it's just a wake up call or a slap in the face. I mean, just look at very serious health conditions like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. You know, we could say that the world is against us, but what we've pretty much proven about all three of those diseases is that they are all preventable diseases.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, there's a genetic predisposition to a lot of those diseases. However, if we don't expose ourselves to the things that actually create those diseases, they never actually occur. Because you can look at this in twins. You can have one twin that gets cancer or one twin that gets a heart attack or heart disease, and the other one doesn't get it. And if they're living different lives, they're completely different people. And they've shown this true about, there was two brothers that they took as well. One of the parents was a criminal. One of them became a criminal. One of them became a police officer. And if you look at the story, both of them, when they reported back to the person that interviewed them, they said, well, after what my dad did, how on earth could I be any different? Like, why would I be any different? And so it's our environment that changes us, not our genetics.
No. Totally agree with you there.
Amazing. No regrets.
No regrets. No, and you know, you shouldn't really have any regrets. They're all life lessons. There's another great book, if I may plug another book, which is called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma, which is an amazing book to read. A not very long book, but super good. It is just puts some things on its head for people. But yeah, that's a favorite of mine.
I actually have a client who was a multimillionaire. He gave it all up, and he's now a school TA. He works with kids with learning difficulties. So he's gone from one really extreme end of the spectrum down to the other. And you know what he said? He's never been happier down here than what's up here, because he's now living a life on purpose. And you know, he he told himself, because his parents weren't successful, that he needed to do those things. So it's really interesting. That book sounds like it may have a very similar message, that it's more about life purpose than it is necessarily about all of these things that society tells us that we need.
Totally.
Chris.
Yes.
If people wanted to reach out to you, if people wanted to learn a little bit more about you, we obviously know that your clinic is called Sensus Chiropractic up in London.
Yeah, Sensus Health.
Yep, up in London, Fulham. But maybe if there's someone on this show that's listening, that's got family that's near you, or maybe someone's just really resonated with some of the points that you put out there today, maybe you could tell them some ways that they could get in contact with you, either social media or email or any of those kinds of things, or if they wanted to find your clinic, how they maybe could find that.
So our website, where all the contact details on, is sensushealth.com. And we are Sensus Health on most social media. I think all of them actually. Sensus Health SW6 on Twitter. We are Sensus Health on Facebook. We are Sensus Health on Instagram, and we are Sensus Health on YouTube and Pinterest. We're Sensus Health on, so we're on most of them. Our email address is info@sensushealth.com. Super easy, and just fire away questions.
So what we'll do for you, Chris, we'll make sure that all of those details are in the description below. So if anybody wants to reach out, we'll make sure that the contact details for Chris are in the description for this podcast or on this video on YouTube or on our podcast channels.
Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for being on with us. So look, I wanted to ask you one last question today, and this is probably my favorite question. I call it the wow moment. The wow moment, which is words of wisdom. The wow moment, words of wisdom.
The wow moment.
The wow moment. And basically what we just want to know is there any parting words that you can give our clients that you think will add some value, or maybe a quote or a mantra or a routine that you live by every single day that you think could inspire our listeners today?
Okay. Well, I've touched on it a little bit, I think. So, I said no regrets. That's definitely one of them. And make sure that you create some good habits in life so that you can enjoy it. Plan, set goals. But I think the biggest thing that chiropractic has given me, and that I always live by, is the inside out theory. And we all living things have an innate wisdom in them. Trees, plants, humans, animals, whatever it is. And there's a D.D. Palmer quote that is, "The power that made the body heals the body." And it is by no means for me a religious statement. That it's more to do with the actual power of universe, right? And how things work together in unison, and how they should be working together without interference.
It's merely an observation. You just have to look at the level of chance that all of these things are coincidence. And it's, if you put a seed in the ground and water it, it grows. You bring a sperm cell and an egg cell together, and it creates a living organism. There is things that we can't explain about the way that the body works. There are many things that we can explain, and what we know is that if we actually start to take care of our health, then obviously we can start to see some of those changes within the intelligence in our body, so that it can, because we know it does. You can pull a branch off a tree, it will grow a new one. You can cut your arm, it will heal it. And so the thing is you have to try exceptionally hard not to heal. If you break your arm, you'd be hard done by for your body not to naturally start that healing process. So it's there, but if something's not changing, then that's when obviously action needs to be taking place.
Yeah. If it's not in the right environment, it's not going to heal. So
amazing, Chris. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Just to obviously summarize what we went through today, guys, know what you want. write it down so that it makes it easily digestible for yourself, and you give yourself some sort of target or vision to run towards. If it's something that requires a little bit of complexity, plan it. And guys, if you make mistakes, don't see them as regrets. Learn them as lessons. So I think there's been some absolutely beautiful gems that have come from Kris today. Like I say, we're going to put all of his details in the description below. So if you want to reach out to Kris, he'll be happy to hear from you. I know that when clients reach to me from London, I always recommend them over to Kris. In fact, unless they're on the other side of London, in which case I know an osteopath on the other side of London as well, who's from the same group, by the way.
Yeah. Of course, right? If we know them, right? And then it's wholeheartedly recommended. So,
and we always look after our tribe, right?
Absolutely.
Kris, thank you so much for coming onto the show with us today. And look,
thank you for having me.
I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. I hopefully that we can meet back up in person soon.
That'll be great.
So
brilliant.
Look, thank you guys for listening today. This is another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor with your host, Patrick Hogg, and we will speak to you guys again soon.